12:05 in the afternoon here on 90.3 FM. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for Helping Seniors of Brevard, and your host, Kerry Fink. Kerry is also the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard, so we're pleased and proud to have Kerry hosting. And Kerry has a special guest, a longtime friend of the show, and that is none other than attorney Bill Johnson. So, Kerry, good afternoon to you. That music of your life always means it's time to get things started with your life.
Absolutely. It's always fun to be on the radio Wednesdays, 12 noon to 1 p.m. right here, 90.3 FM, WEJF, and welcome to those of you listening online, WEJF.net, and the growing number who find the podcast as those make their way out into Apple iTunes and iHeartRadio and Spotify and wherever you get all that. So, first of all, thank you for making this part of your lunchtime today, Wednesday, a beautiful day, and we really are excited to have one of our most favorite people that has been with Helping Seniors, just like you, John Harper, since before there was a Helping Seniors. You guys helped Joe get everything rolling with Brevard Alzheimer's. They call them Joe's Clubs to this day, but Helping Seniors, Joe Steckler, retired Navy captain, started Helping Seniors going literally, now we're into our 13th year of service, because he felt even after all the good work of Brevard Alzheimer's and setting all that up, he said seniors have other challenges, and there needs to be an organization that really helps them navigate. So Helping Seniors for 13 years now has been about senior navigation, whether it's somebody calling us on the helpline, whether it's somebody picking up information from one of our outreaches just like this. And Bill, you know, as an attorney, not only an attorney, but a board certified elder law attorney, which puts you at the extreme cream of the crop as far as people who take the time to do all the extra work that's necessary. And I know you also have become like a real go-to person, even when the legislators in Tallahassee are putting stuff together. They're coming to you asking how they should write the elder law rules. But so much of what you do is educating people, just like what we're going to talk about today, Bill.
Correct. We share that common vision.
you know, and I always think it's amusing because whenever I talk to you, I think, well, let's be honest, as a billable hour, you probably do better when people don't do their homework. Like they show up, there's a problem, there's a squabble. Maybe there was a stroke and now somebody can't do paperwork. And so obviously that's more work for you and your office. And yet, so theoretically more billable hours and all that. But yet I really see you have this passion for helping people because you want to get them in the office when it's just a matter of, you know, maybe a few $100s or something that might save them $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 down the road.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but you're exactly right. Whereas somebody could come in and get a durable power of attorney between $250, $500. But if you don't do that, and you know, somebody becomes incapacitated and you need to access their accounts, well, then you're looking at a guardianship, and that's, you know, starting around $10,000 in Brevard County.
Yeah.
So that's if you don't do the planning, yes, you're exactly right. The costs go much, much higher.
Yeah. And so it was funny because Bill was actually invited to speak at the AARP Chapter 1413 lunch right there in Satellite Beach. They meet first Friday of every month right there at Gleason Park. And Kara Anderson with Simplifying Senior Living, who's been helping us put together all the Helping Seniors Education Series events, pulled together like a super panel. You know, she pulled together some of the real people who are the engines behind what happens with Helping Seniors. Jennifer Barton from Seniors Helping Seniors was there. Jital Patel with Coastal Occupational Therapy was there. But one of the things, and Danica Carlucci Scuderi was with Advocates for Aging was there. But I noticed that they started the panel off with you, Bill, and they didn't give you a whole lot of time. But we were talking because it was like squeezed into a short period of time, but it was still important that you were there. And once again, you're educating community. And when I saw you there and said, what do you want to talk about on the radio Wednesday? You had just uncovered some new scams. In fact, you mentioned those. So we thought, well, let's take time today to keep you safe from scams. So if you're listening, you probably want to grab, maybe a notepad or paper or something and pencil and maybe hear some of this, because this stuff is always evolving. It's like the bad guys are always trying to figure out a new way.
Well, first of all, we probably should define what we mean. And I brought with me today the criminal statute. There's actually a civil one too. But basically what we're talking about is exploitation. And that's knowingly obtaining or using or endeavoring to obtain or use an elderly person or disabled adult's funds, assets, or property with the intent to temporarily or permanently deprive the elderly person or disabled adult of the use, benefit, or possession of the funds, assets, or property, or to benefit someone other than the elderly person or disabled adult by a person, one, who stands in a position of trust and confidence with the elderly person or disabled adult, or two, has a business relationship with the elderly person or disabled adult. And business relationship, by the way, is defined as, it's pretty broadly defined. Doesn't mean you actually have to have some sort of contractual relationship. But it just means, in the course of business.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned that I kind of picked up on the word, and I thought that was an interesting word. I didn't know it was in there. Temporarily or permanently. And the reason I seized on temporarily when you read past that is because I'm sure it happens a lot of time. Like a well-meaning person says, oh, we're short, this much money, so we're just going to borrow this and we're going to put it back. But then it never happens. And so that actually becomes part of that whole...
Interestingly, there's another situation that it occurs. Mom or dad, somebody's trying to scam them. So the well-meaning child shows up with the power of attorney and removes all the money from mom and dad's account and puts it in their own account.
Oh.
And we call that self-help.
Oh.
And and then they come in court and tell the judge, hey, yeah, I was just trying to protect it from so-and-so, da-da-da. But, that falls right in the definition of exploitation.
Wow. And that is becoming, because I know I've heard you talk whenever you give us legislative updates. I know that's a concern in Tallahassee, that everybody wants to try to best protect the seniors, but it always seems like you're having to thread a needle, right? Because you're trying to make it stick, but not in a way that I guess eliminates legitimate help.
Correct. And that's why those documents, again, are so important, these are the people you want put in place, and they are to follow what you desire.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because on some of this legislation, I was going to talk a little later about the injunction for protection against exploitation, but we worked with Attorney General Ashley Moody's office very closely. They were coming up with a bill where they wanted to broaden what is deemed as exploitation. And there are certain circumstances where it is just presumed exploitation.
Oh, wow.
And then we wanted to have a kind of like a domestic violence injunction, except a exploitation injunction, where you could get an injunction against somebody who's exploiting the elderly person, and just like a domestic violence, that person can't contact them, can't come within so many yards of them, all those things that we put in domestic violence injunctions, they can go get one of those.
Wow. Well, it's such an interesting topic, because we've heard and sometimes make fun of, although we shouldn't, we've all heard about, or we think we've all heard about, the Nigerian lottery scam and things like that. But yet, even those things are netting folks day in, day out who just aren't paying attention, or are not capable of paying attention the right way to ferret out that that's not a real deal.
Every day I get some email where somebody's trying to scam us.
Wow.
Every day.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine being a senior and trying to go through that and ferret out what's real, what's not. But every day I get a email, somebody is trying to exploit me or my office or something
Wow.
like that. So if we're getting them, I know anybody with an email address is getting them.
Yeah.
And our experience is if somebody gets scammed through one of these online scams, is then the next thing is their name, contact information is put out on the dark web for
Yep.
sale, and then a whole bunch of scammers all pile on. And, people knock at the door. There's mail that comes, email that comes, phone calls, text messages.
Wow.
And, a lot of times the only recourse is to literally shut the phone off and cancel the email address and start over.
Yeah, because when you were talking about, I think we were having that conversation that once you get on, forgive the expression, a sucker list, then your mailbox, just goes bonkers with all these different, quote, deals special for you today, all these, kind of things. And I guess it makes it even tougher. Maybe a place to start. We can always talk about some specific scams, but do you have, like, as you sit and talk to families that are saying, listen, mom or dad or aunt or uncle or this person is not, I'm concerned about their ability to navigate whether they're viewing these things correctly. How do you?
Well, let's back up
Okay.
on that because we had this conversation the other day.
Okay.
Is that your ability to be scammed usually starts up to 5 years before the person shows any signs of memory loss.
Yeah, that was surprising when you were sharing that because I thought, what a harbinger of things to come. Yeah.
Correct. So, part of if you have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, that disease, before you even show the symptoms of not being able to recall, your short-term memory loss, even before that happens, they become susceptible to being exploited.
Yeah. Wow. And that makes the job of this so difficult. I know there's so many statutes and things in place trying to keep our kids safe, but it really just highlights the fact that, I guess by government definition, seniors are called vulnerable adults as well as, or vulnerable persons, I guess, as well as kids are.
Yeah, and generally that definition of vulnerable adult usually means somebody who has some sort of developmental disability and they're over age 18.
Wow. So where do we go on this journey of talking about scams and how to stay safe from them?
Well, I guess the first statistic I think is 56% of exploitation is done by family.
Wow.
So make sure when you're doing your documents or giving people powers or putting people's names on your bank account, that kind of thing, that the person you're giving that power to is extremely trustworthy.
That's such a scary thought when you think about it, because I know I've been around you long enough that we've had conversations that, Johnny may be fine today, but then he gets married and everything changes because now there's another influence in Johnny's life, and Johnny, the responsible one, may not always be responsible. So that's also an argument why you have to always be checking up and make sure that the people you're assigning to these things are the right people, right?
Correct. Yeah. So with that said, really what we're talking about today is the other 44%, which is total strangers trying to get into your wallet. And we see a ton of different ways they're doing that. You mentioned a few, the Nigerian scam. There is the lover scam is a new one, where they go on a website and strike up a conversation through some sort of dating site. And then, of course, the person they're talking to, they hit it off, which is all planned, by the way.
Of course.
And then next thing you know, the person you're talking to needs some sort of money. I saw once where it was somebody pretending to be a soldier in Iraq who didn't have the money to get home, which last I checked, the military flies you home for free.
Right, right.
But this lady started sending all kinds of money to them.
Unbelievable.
And then, of course, there's a whole myriad of ones where they tell you you won something or you're going to get something. You won the lottery, Publishers Clearinghouse. I have one now where they're going to drop off a suitcase with $1 million in it. But,
oh, no.
Yeah, all you have to do is send your money to, in this particular case, Switzerland. And, this investment's going to pay off, and.
That stuff is incredible because I remember actually having this conversation with my mother, who would get like tons of these. She must have gotten on the sucker list, and she would come over with a piece of mail that said, "Listen, I have won, $2 million and such and such and such and such. I just have to send $99 and they'll deliver it." And so, as unfortunately as anybody who's worked with people who are in that stage, logic doesn't work, right? Because the answer is, okay, Mom, just send them and they can send you your your $2 million or whatever it is. Just tell them to deduct the $99 and it should be all simple and set. Well, that never seemed to actually connect. And isn't that what we're talking about? Why it's a problem for a person maybe to be able to discern what's really happening here.
Correct. My mother put $6,000 in the middle of a magazine and FedExed it to Israel.
Wow.
Because she won Publishers Clearinghouse. Yeah. And she never once, neither her or her husband, thought to pick up the phone and call me.
Yeah. It's incredible. And so I guess there's two parts to this whole conversation. Is like, I guess we need to be aware of what's out there. But what are the things we can do as concerned loved ones to help the people that we're around not get scammed?
Well, I told you some remedial steps, which are, change phone numbers, change emails, addresses. A lot of times we have to have the mail forwarded to another family member so that it doesn't come through the mail. Cameras are good, especially if somebody's going to show up at your doorstep unannounced.
Yeah.
If you have a doorbell cam or any of those blink cams or things like that. So you have images of who this person is. One of the ones, I think we should probably go through a few of these.
Sure.
But you've probably heard on TV where they talk about the deed where they take your house.
Yes.
From what I heard at the AARP meeting, that has arrived in Brevard County.
Wow.
And what they do is they prepare a fake deed and falsify your signature and make it look like you sold your house to them. And then once that deed's recorded, they use that to go to the bank and pull a mortgage on the house. And using their fake ID and fake bank account, they get the money from the mortgage, put it in there. Once the check clears, they take the cash and they're gone.
Wow.
Thank God our local property appraiser office, they're sending out letters and notifications to people who have, they see a deed come in on the homestead property. They're notifying actually the owners.
Good.
It's regrettably not in real time, which would be hard to do, but they are like saying, "Is this you? Did you really transfer your house?"
Yeah.
So they are doing their part best they can to make sure that it doesn't set foot here.
Yeah. I remember you, in your role as president of the Space Coast FSGA, you had actually our property appraiser come in and give a talk about just this topic. And I remember, now this was probably like maybe a year ago, but I remember it was fascinating to learn all this stuff. And I remember at that time she was saying, like, look, it's real easy. You can go and check, just look it up on the property appraiser's website. But how many of us actually think to do that?
Correct. Or the clerk of court's website. You can simply go and look up, if all the items that have been filed with your name on it.
Well, that's incredible. And so this is something, because you see all these, I remember she was talking about, you see all these ads on TV that say, we'll protect your home's title and all that. And she goes, listen, if you'll just use the tools that are here, it's really not necessary, because you can check anytime, day or night, if you just access your computer or something like that.
And to the people it's happened to where they've done this, it's a real big headache.
Yeah, I can't.
Because you got to unwind a mortgage, you got to unwind this money that was moved, you got to clear the title to your property. Yeah, so it's a tremendously big cleanup effort if it happens. Yeah. The same with a lot of the other scams we're talking about where people have taken advantage of other people through email or phone calls is generally we can't get that money back.
Yeah. And
I just heard of a case up in Tallahassee where I think the exploitation exceeded $5 million.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
So a lot of these exploitations run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I remember talking with a professional guardian who was telling me about a case of a person who did fall for the Nigerian lottery scam, which is actually how this person became, a ward of this particular guardian. I guess this is out there a lot.
It is. And that is one of the few ways, if there's no family especially, is you have to, somebody's got to get guardianship so they don't give everything they have away.
And we've talked about this before, but the older generation is typically a trusting generation. They grew up, maybe I don't know if it's true, if there was more integrity in those days or, how it worked. But, I've things that would seem obvious to us, like just hang up the phone, just hang up the phone. That seems rude to them,
Correct. And we were talking about this also at that luncheon.
Yeah.
Is that nowadays with AI technology, if you get on the phone and engage in a conversation with these folks, they can actually save your voice and then use your voice to do other things.
Wow.
Like call your bank, or if the bank tries to call you to verify it, they intercept that and pretend they're you.
Unbelievable.
And even if the person at the other end recognizes your voice, it's not really you. It's just computer generated.
That's incredible. All this technology working against you. You got to make it work for you. We're talking with board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson. And what we're doing is we're talking about scams and ways that you can avoid them. And I guess, as usually if you're going to confront something, the first thing is you kind of have to understand what's out there so then you can make a plan to do well to stay around it. So we're going to actually dive some more into specifics when we get into the second half of the show. But Bill, before we get there, we were talking about the value of education, and you do a lot of seminars trying to help people learn about the things that they need to know in the elder law world. And I know you do a lot of seminars, for example, at One Senior Place. If somebody wants to reach your office or learn more about those seminars, how do they do that?
They can reach us at 321-253-1667.
Okay, and we'll be back on the second half of the Helping Seniors Lunchtime show with more on frauds and scams. See you in a few.
12:33 in the afternoon, and Kerry, Fink from Helping Seniors of Brevard. I think we could listen to that music of your life all afternoon. That sounds good, doesn't it?
Absolutely. One day we ought to have just a sing-along radio show. Why not?
There used to be a early TV show growing up in St. Petersburg, and it used to be called Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing.
Sure.
And we could do something like that.
It's our own version of American Bandstand,
That's
right?
right.
Because usually whenever you play that theme song, invariably all of us on the other side of the glass are like, oh, let's start dancing. I mean,
everybody does.
Yeah.
Even Bill Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, listen, welcome back to the second half of the Helping Seniors radio show. We gather on the radio 12 noon to 1 p.m. It's our Wednesday lunchtime gathering right here on 90.3 FM, WEJF. Welcome back if you're listening online at WEJF.net. And also, for those continuing along in the podcast, we've been having a really good conversation with our longtime friend and very good guest with a lot of expert advice and things for us to learn from. I'm talking about board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson. And Bill, as an attorney, I'm going to give a disclaimer before we jump into the second half of the show, because we said we're going to talk about a specific number of scams in the second part of the show, because you've done a lot of research and you brought kind of what's out there. So we're going to talk about those. So my disclaimer, and you can help me word it correctly, is before the end of the show, I'm going to tell you about one thing you want to know about that is absolutely not a scam. It is the Helping Seniors Car Raffle fundraiser. So I just want to get that disclaimer in, because for the next maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, we're going to talk about scams nonstop, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the car raffle, which is not a scam because it's local, and every year somebody drives home in a new car, and that's exactly what will happen Saturday, October 7th at the American Muscle Car Museum. But more on that later.
So some of the ones we see quite often, there is the iTunes card scam.
Oh, yeah?
Where they call up and convince the senior that there is, their computer's broke or something's broke, and they can repair it from where they are via the phone or the internet, but you just have to send them some money, and they'll accept payment through iTunes cards. So the seniors go down, buy these $100 iTunes cards. You scratch off the back, there's a number, you read the number to them, and of course they are just instantly cashing that. And some of the victims go back again and again and again for thousands of dollars in iTunes cards.
That's something to be careful, right? Because you get this little message pop up, and says your computer has been compromised or something like that. Click here, we can help you fix it. And then all of a sudden you find yourself not only in a scam, but probably a scam that they created on your computer.
Correct. And, I just got one the other day. They are now getting to doing it via text message.
Oh, wow.
So they send me something basically and says, oh, there was a problem with your Amazon delivery. And here, enter your username and password to enter into your account to fix the delivery issue. Well, it's not Amazon who's sending that text message. And I've had those from multiple. I was just looking on my phone, but I erase them immediately. But I've had those from multiple fake companies saying, hey, you've got to enter your information here because we couldn't deliver to you. The other one I get a lot of, being a lawyer, is I get emails to my office that I'm so-and-so, I own a company, and I need a contracts lawyer. And basically what they're trying to do is lure you into supposedly representing them, even though they're never going to come in your office.
Wow.
And they'll tell you they have some dispute with somebody off somewhere, and miraculously you settle the dispute. The person mails the check to your law office. You deposit it in the trust account. Of course, then your client needs the money immediately for whatever reason,
right,
and wants you to wire it to them. And then you wire it to them, and that check that went in your trust account a week ago bounces.
Wow.
So, yeah, we constantly, at least with our trust account, we wait like 2 weeks to...
You have to, right?
Oh, yeah, and don't assume a certified check is good anymore, because those are being forged left and right.
When you said that, I was thinking not so long ago, Phil Archer, who is our county attorney, and he came and gave a talk to the Golden Providers Group, and he brought with him a $100,000 cashier's check that was bogus. And he goes, and this was made. He goes, I'm the guy that prosecutes these things, and this was made out to me. And he said, so you can't trust a cashier's check,
Correct. And so that's another thing to look out for. I've had several people who somebody has shown up and supposedly is going to do work on their house, and they become buddies with the homeowner somehow and literally drive that person to the bank
Wow.
Now, remember, this is some senior getting in a car with a total stranger.
Wow.
Drive them to the bank, withdraw the, $10,000 to repair whatever. And then, of course, they drop them off at home and disappear. And the work's never done.
And the work never gets done.
And it's all in cash, and there's no way to trace it or find out who that person is.
We've actually had calls on the Senior Information Helpline numerous times over the years from people who have dealt with an unscrupulous contractor. Somebody showed up and said, I'll do this work on your house. So then they willingly go out and create whatever deposits and things are necessary, and then nothing happens.
Correct. And you can call the authorities on that, and the licensing authorities, and if you know who it is.
Right.
Some of these cases we don't even have a name.
Yeah, they just show up on your doorstep, and again, maybe it's that same person. I don't say personality; it's not really the right word, but the same person that might fall for the thing in the mailbox, might fall for the call on the phone, might fall for the person showing up on your doorstep saying, hey, we're just in your area and we're doing some work.
Might fall for the text message. I mean, there's so many ways they can get in.
Yeah.
It's not like anymore where, it's either the phone or the mailbox. Now You've got all these different avenues. And it's only going to get worse from what I'm reading with AI.
Yeah, that's a scary. We started talking about that before the break. Talk about that. You said people getting calls get recorded, and then through AI, their voice can be manipulated into anything that it needs to be.
Correct.
Or maybe shouldn't be, but it what they think it needs to be anyway. Wow.
So we see those quite a bit. I think the most common one that we see is really somebody comes through the email.
Yeah.
They do the phishing scam. We have, at my office, gone to two-factor authentication.
Right.
Simply because they are, there is this new ransomware stuff.
Wow.
Where they can go out, and if they get into your system, all it takes is one employee to click on the wrong email. Then they can actually freeze you out of all your information on your network and then hold you ransom. And they've done that to companies. They target law firms with that. So, even if you get into my system, you can't get into the other stuff without the second two-factor ID.
That's a thing that I remember we were talking about when we were cooking up the concept for the radio shows. We were talking about, when you get an email, I think it was maybe Phil Keschline from AARP, because he mentioned something about it. He said, the scam where you get the email from your bank or something and they're telling you need to get in contact with them because there's a problem with your account or whatever it is. And then you click on that link. He said you can't be sure that you're actually contacting the bank. So you always got to go back and use the number you have that you know is safe.
Right, because the phone number in the email might even be fake.
Right.
And you might be calling somebody who's posing as a bank.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And, Bill, it just highlights, even if you're astute, and I think this is probably worth bringing up.
Have you seen the video?
Which one?
The video of the guy who reversed engineered the scammers. He was a computer hacker.
Yes, and
he actually rerouted the camera feed from inside. And this particular one was in India.
Yes,
and they're trying to bilk some lady out of her money, and they're all huddled around laughing.
Yeah,
as they're stealing her money.
Yeah, I think that was at least the one I saw was AARP had done a pretty big exposure of this, and they showed that video, and it's really kind of shocking how heartless these people are. But
oh yeah,
but what I was going to say is that it feels like on a good day we can be discerning if you're having any kind of confusion or any kind of challenges on that level. It becomes really difficult. But the thing that I wanted to really kind of point out is I don't know that if you're a victim of a scam, there's probably a terrible thing that you don't necessarily want to tell people how dumb you are. And yet it's really not a question of you being that dumb. It's really it's so prevalent, and so these guys are that good at being evil.
They are very good at being manipulative and steering these people to giving them their money. But, there is always a dynamic between parents and their children. When you're younger, your parents always were the ones who told you, do this, do that. When your parents become aged, they're in their 80s, and you're telling them not to do this and not to do that, they don't like to hear that, because they're the ones who are supposed to be in the know to protect you, not the other way around. And so you're correct. A lot of times these scams don't get reported at all to anybody, because they don't want to be embarrassed that they actually did it.
Yeah. Well, and it just points, the challenge of being aware about all these things, because like you said, it can come at you. It can come at you from any corner, so you really have to be aware. Phil Archer, we were talking about him, our county attorney. He does a really good, I think, newsletter once a month where he tries to publish what his office is seeing around, through their channels, what the most current scams are. So we usually try to make those available on the Helping Senior social media, but you can go directly to Phil Archer's page, because he's got it there every month, and he's always trying to, like, guys, look out for this. Here's the latest,
I agree, because it's an ever-changing field. Like, you don't see the Nigerian prince scam that much anymore, because they've moved on to other things.
Yeah. I was smiling at something you said during the break. You said, if these people would turn their creativity away from this kind of evil stuff and put it to something that would be good, because they really are creative at finding ways to build people. It's like, it's scary how good they are.
I think I saw the statistic, but it's in the billions of dollars that they are getting.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so many things you have to be careful with. So, I kind of go like, education is always the first place. If you'll take the time to be aware, there is a lot of good publications out there. I know AARP tries their best. In fact, I saw a report that they had given out talking about the scams, that were prevalent last year. Of course, probably the minute it's printed, they've come up with, new ones, like we talked about Phil Archer's newsletter, but also a lot of this stuff you can get just by, taking the time to learn where the scams are.
And I read the AARP page, and a lot of times they put out scam alerts and what's going on around too.
Well, I think one of the most important parts of the takeaway from today's discussion, again, we're talking with board certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson with the law office of William A. Johnson. You really take a lot of time to educate people on things. And I would think one of the things that people should take away from today is get somebody reputable to really help you craft these documents, because that's a way that would help you minimize getting scammed, right? If you have a well thought out, well appointed power of attorney and some of these documents that you need, the nice thing is you can always say, it probably adds a layer of protection.
And if you have concerns, in this day and age, we have online banking.
Yeah.
So I have lots of clients that they don't do anything on their parents' account, but they monitor it.
Yeah.
And to see if they see anything strange, like all of a sudden, mom or dad wrote a $10,000 check.
What's up with that?
Yeah, so they can intercept the trouble. Also, going by your parents' house and finding out what's going on. I always say, like in January, we have a rush of business. That's because during Thanksgiving and Christmas, the kids visited.
And then
all of a sudden they realize mom and dad weren't doing as good as they thought.
Yep.
And next thing you know, we're doing either documents or guardianships or something, because now that they've dropped by, they see things aren't going as well as they thought they would.
And that's why we always, and I guess maybe one like little final area to talk about. I don't know necessarily that it's scams, but it may be well-intentioned, but it's not helpful. I know you and I have spent so much time talking TV, radio about all this do-it-yourself stuff. You know, they make it sound so easy on the TV commercial. Oh, you know, we're licensed in all the states. We'll help you get your paperwork together so you have the power of attorney and all those things you need, your last will. And they just make it sound so simple. And yet we've had this conversation a million times that what you thought might be helpful that you spent a few dollars on the internet to do will cost you tens of thousands because now you need it to work and it don't work. And now you, as the attorney stepping in, don't have a lot of options that are inexpensive to sort it out.
Correct. Yeah. Usually it requires some sort of court time and judicial intervention.
Yeah, which is all ka-ching, ka-ching, right? So
Right.
it's time. So, Bill, again, board certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson with the William A. Johnson, PA. If somebody, you have a great website, floridaelderlaw.net. I remember that. And there's a great resource that I want you to mention. I keep forgetting the exact title, but it's a great kind of like answer book where you've condensed a lot of the most frequently asked questions that people have about retirement and knowing things about everything from Medicaid to finding the long-term solution that you need. And it's just a great resource, and it's free. It's right there on your website.
Right. It's the Florida Long-Term Care and Nursing Home Answer Book.
Yeah, and of course you find it also in Boomer Guide because you make sure it's in there each issue that comes out. But if somebody wants to call you or learn about seminars and things that you do over at One Senior Place and hopefully soon in our little senior resource center now that we're there in Melbourne, because One Senior Place is in Vieira. That's a great spot for people to get to. And then now, with the opening of the Helping Seniors Resource Center, there's a good resource right there kind of closer to the beachside and all that.
Yeah, and they can call our office at 321-253-1667 if they want a copy of the book or make an appointment, that kind of thing.
That's good. Well, thank you, Bill. And as we talked about, we were going to reserve some time at the end of the show to talk about one great deal that is not a scam. It is the Helping Seniors Car Raffle. You know, folks, as a Florida nonprofit, and I remember Joe saying this early on, because I was just the media guy in those days trying to help Joe with this, and he would always talk about the need for people don't get how important it is to do fundraising for nonprofits. It's just, you know, people assume that somehow nonprofits get funded, and the answer is they don't unless you help us. We can only go as far as you will help us to go. I mean, it's literally that simple. If we don't have it, we can't do it. And so now for 13 years, the little Helping Seniors of Brevard engine that could has been helping. We took 5,400 calls on our helpline last year. And one of the ways that we keep going is through really what's become our biggest fundraiser. And Joe found a way to make it a fun fundraiser because he and AJ Hires, the car dealer, go back to the 90s where they used car raffles to help Joe build Joe's Clubs and things like that. And now it's become a real way for us to fund the work of helping seniors. So when you get a Helping Seniors car raffle ticket, you're actually doing three things. You're supporting the work of helping seniors through your donation, but you are also maybe going to rent a really cool car. And Bill, we talked about this. The winner for the grand drawing Saturday, October 7th at the American Muscle Car Museum, they get to pick the car that they want to choose because AJ has put up a car from each of his fine dealerships. So you could be practical. You could take a Kia Sportage or a Mitsubishi.
Nah.
You could take a Mitsubishi Outlander. You could be like kind of hip and cool and get the Mazda Miata convertible. That looks pretty cool going on. Okay, or this could be the last year they're saying this for the gasoline-powered muscle cars. We're talking about your choice of a Dodge Challenger or a Chevy Camaro.
Now we're talking, Kerry.
Well, but that's the decision you get to make when we pull your winning ticket on Saturday, October 7th. And the cool part about it is, and I got to say this, you do not have to be present to win. When we pull that ticket and Mark Pylock, the owner of the American Muscle Car Museum, reads off that winning number, it's done. That we will track that person down even if they're not there and say, you got a car. Because this is a real deal. So, but it's more fun when you're there at the Muscle Car Museum, like Gail McGinnis, who won the Chevy Camaro last year. She was there. They finished reading the number.
Just out of curiosity, how many local people have won versus out of state or?
So this is a great question. So we do get people who buy tickets from out of state all the time. It happens all the time. Could be snowbirds, could be people who just like to support the charity, things like that. As it has turned out, for no other reason than it's just the luck of the draw, they've all been local. So this is in our role as helping seniors. This is car raffle number 7, and every single person has been local. Gail McGinnis was in there last year when they read her winning number. The year before, the gentleman was not. He took a Kia Sportage, but he was Orlando, which I would call local. The year before, it was a gentleman who lived in Indialantic. He wanted a Camaro, and he upgraded to a convertible. The year before that, it was a lady who's local, Karen Hoodless, who still has that beautiful 2019 fire red Dodge Challenger, and it looks as good as the day she got it, because she'll bring it out from time to time to different events and show off, like, look, people really do win these things. And so real people win this, and so far everybody's been local. So the point is, one of the fun things about being local is you get to go to Mark Pylock's American Muscle Car Museum, and he's now up to Bill 435 cars in there. It was 395 last year, so he's increased his collection by 10%. So even if you were there last year, it means you haven't seen 10% of his collection.
I just need one, and it's that one, that green one that's over in the left-hand corner of the room you enter.
They let us in the front room to film some promos, which you'll be seeing on the Helping Seniors of Brevard website here soon. And we were asking Andrew Mackey, who's the director of events and promotions that they do. They help us. They make us look good. We show up, and they just put on a party that doesn't stop. It's just a terrific night at the museum, included with your ticket. But I asked him, how much is the front room worth? He said, well, in years past, he said, I've told you like $7 million worth of cars because he's got this collection of Ford GTs. He points at the car in the center, and he goes, well, this one Mark bought as a prototype, and it's like the only one that exists. He says, so the insurers tell us it's someplace between $5 and $10 million for that one car. You got to get in there and see it, because that's included. So how do you get a ticket? 1 for $25, $5 for $100 donation. You can go by Bill Johnson's office, because you have tickets, right, Bill?
We do.
And where is your office?
It is at 140 Interlaken Road, Suite B, Melbourne, Florida, 32940.
So you can get a ticket from Bill. You can come by the Helping Seniors Resource Center, 1344 South Apollo, second floor. You'll find us. You can also get your tickets by calling Nancy Deerdorf at 321-473-7770, which also is our Helping Seniors info line. You can get them safely and securely online, helpingseniors.carraffle.com, or you can pop by any Boniface Hires dealership, check those cars out up close, and get your ticket right while you're there. So we always say you have to be in it to win it. The Helping Seniors Car Raffle, that date is Saturday, October 7th. So we look forward to welcoming you there. So that's it. That's the time we have for today's edition of Helping Seniors Radio. We will see you next week right back here, 12 noon on 90.3 FM WEJF. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, and Nancy Deerdorf and our whole Helping Seniors team, thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting the work of Helping Seniors.